April 23rd, 2020 meeting. What is the wishes of this body? I have a motion by Commissioner Jean. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Herbst.
Couple questions?
Oh, yep. And now for discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, thanks. I think these items could be tabled to our next meeting so we can get to the important items on the agenda, but we had tabled the issue of the mandatory private lead service lateral replacement ordinance until a future meeting. Is that going to be at our next meeting? Is that the plan?
I anticipate, yeah, we'll
Okay.
bring some examples from other communities.
All right. The second thing I had was the barrier around Reservoir Park. Any activity on that, Scott?
I just got word from Parks Department today. We are planning on putting some junipers around the pipe area there.
Very good, thank you. And then on the Water Conservation Education Program, I would propose that that I and Steve and Scott maybe get together at some point and work on that, unless you have something else in the works, Scott.
That would be fine, Jim. We can set something up.
If there's no objection, I'd volunteer to do that, and anyone else who'd like to join us.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Appreciate that, Jim.
And is our next meeting, Mayor, on June?
June.
First Tuesday of June?
Yeah, is
So
that June
perhaps-
2nd? Is that what it is?
Yeah, perhaps we could have a meeting sometime in between now and then to discuss that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion?
There was one clarification on the minutes.
Okay.
On page 10, under where the title was Dave Voss, Myron Construction, the third line down, it says Myron does 98%. That should be Myron and C.D. Smith do 98% of all this type of work in the state.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, are we prepared to vote? All right, all of those in favor of approving the minutes as slightly amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to our director's report on utility operations, I will pass the mic.
I think this is pretty short today since our last meeting, but if anyone has any questions on any of those three items, where things are at. Yep.
The percent of sludge that's out, do we know that, Dave?
I'd say 80% of it. We're hoping the next couple days we'll finish. It's been kind of a dry spring, favorable weather, so we've been hauling and that's going well.
And one other question, has the DNR responded any further regarding the foaming? And I was a little bit confused, maybe I didn't read it well, but did that originate from their new facility or the old facility?
It originated from the old facility, and I sent him a TFO report and talked to him at that time, but I haven't followed up with him and he hasn't gotten back to me. But it's something I should do. I'll probably give him a call tomorrow.
Is there any other discussion? Did you want to touch on these topics specifically? Or are we good?
I think we're
Okay.
Yep.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mayor.
I guess we'll move on to item number 3, discussion related to the residential and commercial percentages of usage versus revenue.
So we do have Ellers on the call. Brian is on the call if commissioners have any questions. Brian did put together the memo that's in your packet. You know, as we kind of work through this with the rate structure, try to explain a little bit on how our rate structure compares with others and what our rates are with the residential usage versus commercial usage, and then versus revenue by residents versus commercial. And as he states out in the memo as well, that, you know, if you wanted to relook at the rate structure, that would probably be a time at the next proposed rate study that we would do, if that's something the commission is interested in.
When would that be, Eric?
It would begin requested in 2021.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I know I raised the issue originally. I wouldn't want to do anything that gets in the way of the current rate structure approval process, but I do think it's something we might visit on the next go-around.
Okay.
That would be my hope.
I don't know if you're okay, Mayor, if Brian, do you have anything to add at all with regards to what you provided?
No, I think, in terms of the questions that were posed to us, I hope I've provided enough detail to the commission here to kind of give you the framework as to where the utility has been in terms of water rates and water structure, and then also just understanding how the PSC looks at it, and then just overarching understanding that you are governed by the PSC. I think, as you kind of alluded to and is outlined in the alternative section, I would say it's advisable, as you're interested to do that, you get a stab at it anytime you're in a conventional rate case to propose your own cost of service study. That would have included a decent amount, probably about 2 weeks worth of extra time on our part, and then about 2 more weeks worth of extra time on the PSC's part. And then, just given the timeline that we were at with, closing on the safe drinking, I don't think it totally would have been doable. Also, at the point in which we were made aware, it definitely wasn't doable. As to kind of changing what the PSC had already done, I think you would have also realized some duplicative costs if you would have wanted us to redo, or at least change and investigate a new cost of service study outside of what the PSC has prepared. So that said, it's advisable to do it next time. This rate case, because of how the PSC looks at it, they're only capturing so much of the drinking water facility. So when when the city would look to go in to capture the remaining assets to make sure that they have rates in place to repay all of the debt service and any new projects outside of the drinking water facility that have happened to date, I think that'll be in a certainly appropriate time to go in and look at that.
I have a quick question. For the AB size utilities, what percentage, or maybe you don't know that, but how many get formal input to them regarding the sort of asking for what we want versus accepting what they give us? Do you understand my question?
I do. In terms of the cost of service, like preparing your own, that is, and having the PSC review it, it's more common in the larger utilities. For example, we've done this for cities in the Milwaukee area that are utilities of at least 20,000 plus customers. And the main reason is simply for the concerns here. And if you feel that the rates aren't exactly falling under suit, and then I think why it's become more popular is because the multifamily class was recently introduced in 2014, and so the rates have kind of been a little skewed since that point. So that's I would think the only kind of 2 reasons outside of you have concern where you have a large user that's over 50%, one single customer, then I think you want to make sure you're attentive to their needs. So in communities that are smaller than that, we've certainly provided it for that. I don't have direct percentages, but those are kind of the cases where we do prepare, the cost of service study outside of what the PSC would do normally.
Okay, no more questions?
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Certainly.
All right, moving on to item number 4, discussion on the PSC public hearing.
So this comes because we had completed the public hearing with the PSC. We had one comment from back in April 15th. It was a written comment that was posted. We haven't had any other comments. And no outside entities or any individuals had commented during the public hearing. So this is really more of an information. Public comment period ended yesterday. And so, Brian, you can speak too, but I think we are, the PSC is going to go ahead and move forward with finalizing the rate structure, and I don't have a timeline for that at this point.
I can add that typically it takes them 7 to 14 days. However, the PSC has been sensitive to the timing in regards to the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. So they've said that they've kind of advanced their processes so that it was ready to go immediately after yesterday. So hoping by the end of the week or early next week.
Great.
Okay, any other discussion? We'll move on to item number 5, discussion and possible action on award of the wastewater treatment facility construction contract. Got a couple of folks that are going to speak on this, I think.
Yeah, so I had sent out this morning a memo from Donahue, and Mike is here to kind of go over that in detail and answer any questions that you might have on that. Mike, thank you.
Thanks, Eric, Mayor. Want to take just a few minutes to walk through the bid evaluation memo that, as Eric said, I think you probably ended up in your hands this morning. It's dated May 4th. And so please stop me at any point and ask any questions if you want some more information. At the top of that memo, I'll just walk through it kind of page by page, item by item. At the top of that page, of the first page, is a summary of the bids that were received. A bid was received from Myron, a bid was received from C.D. Smith, and the results of those bids are shown in Table 1. That same table's been presented previously. So what I'd like to do is move on to the next section in the memo and talk about if the city is to move forward, what project should they move forward with? And we provide some perspective here in this memo. The base bid does not include a really important element of the project, and that's effluent filtration, secondary effluent filtration. A component of this project is to position the city to comply, or the treatment facility to comply with an impending phosphorus TMDL. That future permit, that future requirement will require the facility to discharge less phosphorus than it has historically, conceivably much lower, on the order of 0.2 milligrams per liter, 0.3 milligrams per liter, depending on what the flows through the facility are. The base project doesn't include filtration. What we wanted to do was competitively bid different manufacturers against one another. And that's what alternatives 8, 9, 10, and 11 do. There's 2 different filter manufacturers, one by Kruger and one by Aqua Aerobics. 2 of the alternates for each 2 of the alternates are for 3 filter units, 2 are for 4. Not knowing where bids were going to end up, we thought that that was a prudent approach to bid 3 units versus 4 units. And as we look at this, we've spent a lot of time talking to staff. They have a preference. They like the filtering action of the Aqua units. It filters from the outside to the inside, and that's attractive to them, and we understand that. And we always try to take the preferences of plant staff into account, and wherever possible to fully comply with those preferences. In this instance, though, there is a compelling cost difference between the 2. There's a track record difference between the 2, and there's some performance differences between the 2. So in this instance, and I think it's a rare instance, staff has a preference for Aqua. We think, given the track record, the performance, and the compelling cost difference, Donahue is really with our role to protect the financial well-being and ultimately be responsible for the outcomes from this facility. We have to recommend the Kruger alternative. Our recommendation, as we spell out here, and I can go into far more detail on this if anybody wants it, but our recommendation would be to go with alternate 8, 3 Kruger filter units. From a hydraulic loading standpoint, that alternative is the same as alternative 11 for Aqua units. That kind of levels the playing field. And then there's a pretty compelling difference, capital cost difference between those 2, on the order of $443,000 difference between the 2. So again, the city does need to select one of the alternates, 8, 9, 10, or 11, and Donahue would recommend they select alternative number 8. Table 2 then looks at the bids, the base bid plus alternative 8, that recommended bid alternate, for Myron and C.D. Smith. Myron is the apparent low bidder for that scenario. And we refer to that here throughout the remainder of the memo as the essential project. There's nothing extra in this project. It's the project that was in the facility plan, exactly as it was outlined in the facility plan. That's shown there in Table 2. Myron is the apparent low bidder. We think that there's another alternative that the city should really give serious consideration to, and that is alternative 6, alternate bid item number 6. One of the most important performance parameters for an activated sludge system for the liquid train is secondary clarifier surface area. This alternative would add a 4th secondary clarifier and increase the surface area 45%. That would give the facility tremendous operating flexibility and maybe more importantly, tremendous capacity, additional capacity with that 4th clarifier. If we look at the cost of that alternative, for Myron, it was in the vicinity of $1.6 million. That was quite a bit below what our estimate was, and quite a bit less than if the facility were to construct that at a later date. If you look in figure number 1, you can see where secondary clarifier number 4 is located. It's going to be kind of shoehorned in between 2 structures. It's possible to build that later, but it would cost a lot more than $1.6 million, potentially on the order of doubling that cost. If it was Donahue owned that plant and we were faced with this decision, we'd think long and hard. I think we would ultimately elect to build that secondary clarifier now. It's just tremendous benefit for the city moving forward. We call that the recommended project. The recommended project is the base project plus alternate 8, 3 Kruger filters, plus alternate 6, the additional secondary clarifier. The cost or the bids for that project, that what we're calling the recommended project, is shown in Table 3. Again, Myron is the low bidder. So at that point, Myron was the low bidder for those 2 different alternatives. We then decided to start collaborating with Myron and looking for ways of reducing the project cost. Table 4 summarizes kind of what the construction budget is. We start with the $80 million that we've been talking about for a couple of years. We subtract off other project-related costs, and we arrive at the construction budget that we show in Table 4. These projects that we've been looking at, these bids that we've been looking at, exceed that budget. So with Myron being the low for the conceivable scenarios that the city would move forward with, we started collaborating with Myron. And we looked at some value engineering alternatives. Some ways that we could reduce the cost of the project, working with the city, Donahue, Myron working together. How could we change or reduce the project cost without affecting the integrity of the project? The performance of the project will be the same. The overall process configuration, everything will be the same, but we looked for ways that we could reduce some costs. To give you an example of some of those things, it's like maybe conduit, electrical conduit. Our designers tend to prefer Pvc coated conduit everywhere. While there's places where we could use a different, more cost-effective conduit. Where we could use that, let's look at that. We looked at things like, for big equipment items, sometimes we'll require the ability to witness the testing at the factory for a generator and a switchgear. It's a lot of money to do that. It was about $30,000 to go witness that test. Again, it's the same project, but we could accomplish the same thing for less. We looked at probably about 200, in the vicinity of about 230 different line items. A lot of them we said no to, a lot of them we said, yeah, it's the same project. That'd be an effective way to reduce the project cost. The product of that effort reduces the project cost, that those savings would be realized by change order. Nobody's going to submit a different bid, but the potential savings from those types of value engineering, let's find a more cost-effective way to do the project, would reduce the project cost by what was shown here in Table 5, $1,557,247. There was a second thing that we do. That value engineering, that's a healthy exercise. It's not an uncommon exercise. We should always ask, can we accomplish the same thing for less? Another thing that is standard operating procedure is what we call looking at type 2 equipment. As you might imagine, there's page after page after page of different pieces of process equipment, major pieces of equipment on this project. And there were pages and pages of that equipment on the bid form. A lot of it's lumped into what we call Type 1. Type 1 is when we sit down with the plant staff, city staff, and we decide that there's manufacturers A, B, C, sometimes D, but they're all essentially equal, and we'll let the contractor pick. That's the Type 1 equipment. The contractor picks that. Whatever gives him a better bid, whatever he prefers, he includes in his bid. But there's another category, a smaller group of equipment, but there's another category called Type 2 equipment, and that's what the memo is referring to. We looked at the Type 2 equipment. On the Type 2 bid form, there's an A manufacturer, and then there's a B and a C, sometimes a D. And in those instances, the city is saying, we don't want the contractor to decide. There is a preference for the A manufacturer. So in the Type 2 equipment, every A manufacturer on that schedule must be included in the base bid. And then they provide costs for these others. And then the city can review those costs and decide, is it going to be A, or are we going to take a cost reduction and go with one of these other manufacturers? Type 2, the city's deciding and making a value decision in the context of costs. We've gone through that Type 2 equipment bid list with the city, with Myron. Myron provided that. We reviewed that with the city. And the savings by going with, we didn't take all of those potential reductions, but the one where we feel, again, the integrity of the job is preserved, there'd be $485,200 in savings, okay? So in Table 5, we're showing that essential project, the base bid, the base project, plus alternate 8. We subtracted off savings that could be realized by change order by using different Type 2 equipment. We subtract off value engineering savings that would also be realized by change order, and we arrive at the total at the bottom of Table 5, a little over $74 million. That cost is getting very close to what the original construction budget was, in the vicinity of 3% of the original construction budget. We did that same exercise for the recommended project. The recommended project, again, is the base project, 3 Kruger filters, and the secondary clarifier. And that total is shown at the bottom of Table 6, okay? Table 5 is the essential project. Table 6 is the cost of the recommended project. And then finally, on the last page is Figure 2, where we provide a quarterly bill perspective.
Essential project, Table 6 is the cost of the recommended project. And then finally, on the last,
Let me go. On Figure 2, we're looking at the quarterly bill for a typical residential user, customer, to pay for both the recommended project and the essential project. Using the Clean Water Fund, as we've talked about in the past, the recommended project would result in a quarterly bill of about $88 a month. The essential project would be a little over not a month, a quarter, $88 a quarter for the recommended project, a little over $87 a quarter for the essential project, and what we've been talking about with the public is $88.50 a quarter. So from a rate perspective, we're on script. We're on track with what we've been telling the public for the last couple of years. And that's really what the memo says. Be happy to answer any questions that anybody has at this point related to the memo.
I'd like to ask Dave, this operator preference for the aqua aerobics filter, was that based on literature that you reviewed or another project that you traveled to witness the filters, or how was that?
We did make several field trips. I wasn't in on all of them, but the closest one was to Medford.
Yeah.
There was one near Milwaukee and one down in Illinois. And so the guys got to talk to the operators there and look at the equipment firsthand. And so they have a preference for the equipment, but they haven't had the opportunity to look at or evaluate operating costs or the other cost analysis that
Did
Don
they
has
look at
done.
both brands, both Kruger
Yes.
and? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Jim, there's a fundamental difference between the two. The flow
Yeah,
for a Kruger goes inside.
Yeah.
They like the fact that on Aqua, it comes from the outside in, yeah. Now, one of the things, just for the benefit of everybody here, I didn't share this, I didn't want to get too, I didn't want to muddy the waters. You already have a lot in front of you. We did do the life cycle cost analysis, and the savings for Kruger is about $1.3 million over the 20 years. There's a $1.3 million benefit for Kruger versus Aqua.
are guarantees, warranties, O&M procedures pretty similar, Dave?
I think I have to defer to Mike on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Yeah.
I'm aware of that, the Kruger has approximately 12 installations or functioning units in the state. Aqua does not have any, and I think the oldest one that's been in service is at Oconomowoc. I did talk to the staff this morning about that. They, to date, have not changed out the media. That wouldn't be true, as I understand it, with Aqua.
Yeah.
So,
Would not be true with Aqua?
no, what we're hearing is that it's in about a 4 or 5 year cycle, maybe a little longer.
Joe, did you say there were no Aqua installations in Wisconsin?
Not to deal with phosphorus.
Oh, all right, the one in Medford is,
That's
That's
a
Kruger.
Kruger.
that's a Kruger. All right, sorry.
Yeah. It is probably important for everybody to think about. A recommendation might be different if it was a 10 milligram per liter TSS limit or something like that.
Yes.
But we really are kind of pushing the envelope of technology, and there's only maybe a dozen of these facilities around the country that are trying to do this. And so, you know, it's our view, as we spelled out in here, it's our view that now's the time to be conservative and let someone else push that envelope. And then there's some pretty compelling cost differences between the two, too. We hate not being in a position to, and it's very unique, it doesn't happen very often, not being in a position to advocate for exactly what the staff wants, but this is, I guess, a rare exception to that.
Is there any other discussion?
Thanks, everybody.
Did we want to?
Eric, could I'm sorry, I'm out of order probably, but.
I'll
this-
allow it.
Thank you. The comment that was made on the public hearing from the gentleman, is it 3? About bonds instead of what we're doing for financing. I'm not interested in revisiting the financial aspects of this project. I think we've done the right thing and gone a long way, but can you enlighten us a little bit as to what a project financed through municipal bonds might look like as opposed to the way we're doing it?
Yeah, I know Donahue's looked at this too. You know, the interest rates are definitely higher.
For bonds?
Yes, for
Yes.
bonds, yep. And, you know, Ellers, I think, is Brian still on the line? He might be able to speak with these large projects as well, you know, the bonding over that period of time as well. So,
It is, the Clean Water Fund, Safe Drinking Water Fund programs are really good programs when you qualify for them. In this case, as you have. And that's mainly due to the interest rate that you're allowed. And right now, you know, you're in an interest rate in the later, 1%. So you're probably looking at about, 1.8.
Yes.
We'll just call it for that on the safe drinking, and then clean water. It'll depend on when you close on the loan. But right now, if you did a 30-year, you'd be just around 1.9% for a 30-year loan. If you were to do that out in the public market, it's probably closer. The rate isn't flat. It's a fixed rate, but it's not flat in that you have ascending coupons as you go throughout the maturity of the bonds. And so we would probably presume, given current market conditions, around like 3% true interest cost. So you're definitely realizing some interest savings here through the Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. So I would disagree with the comment made by, looks like Mr. Del Conte for the public hearing.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Brian, I think we'd have to use a revenue bond, and we'd have to have, I don't remember the right terminology, but we'd have to have like 1 year's payment as part of that. That probably extends the debt, and the closing costs would be much, much higher, or I assumed it would be much higher. Is that correct?
What would happen in terms of I'll address the first thing that you're talking about in terms of annual debt payment, and you have to prove that you have net revenues above that debt payment. That is the case no matter what, because you do have existing, public market debt that usually comes with a 1.25 coverage, and your 2017 and 2019 water and sewer bonds have that. So since you're already established at 1.25 coverage, the Clean Water and the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan they come on parity, as it's called. They come on parity with your existing debt. So you still have to prove that 1.25 coverage. The state, if you were to have no existing debt, can at some times go to 1.1 coverage, just because of how they actually issue bonds for this funding program, and they're a AAA rated entity, so they're kind of allowed a little bit more coverage when it comes to when it comes to their bond closing documents. Now, speaking to the cost of issuance, I mean, that could go either way. You could say, well, how much do we spend on the application? How much do we spend, doing the different things that you have to do for each of these programs? Typically, it is cheaper to do through the state program, but I won't say it always is. You still have bond counsel in both scenarios, and so it's kind of horse and piece, really. But I think typically it's cheaper to do through the Safe Drinking Clean Water Fund loan program. That said, the interest savings, would lower that coverage requirement ultimately. So the interest savings that I spoke to, a 1.9% over the 30 years versus, around 3%, you're reducing your year-to-year debt service that way. So organically, you're reducing that debt coverage.
Rates would go up in either case.
Correct.
And I just raise that because I know these public comment periods, we conduct a lot of them and we don't get much response. In fact, in some cases, we get no response, which is always a little bit defeating to me. So I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Del Conte's comments here were fully considered.
Thank you. So I think we were going to have C.D. Smith maybe have some comments. They didn't get a chance to speak last time. So I want to make sure you have that opportunity.
Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm Mike Krolchek with C.D. Smith. The wastewater treatment project was bid and is over budget. In fact, the engineer said a number of times he was surprised by that he's over budget, the project's over budget, but we're not. A week before the project was bid, we contacted the engineer because we were concerned about the number of electrical bidders. We knew there was only one electrical bidder bidding the project. The other firm needed more time. So we requested a week's time so that the other person could bid the project. That request was denied. The other electrical contractor actually called the engineer as well, and that was denied. The project was then bid, and the electrical value of that represents 22% of the project, $16.7 million, which that can happen. Again, I want to mention that your water treatment project that you bid, came in within budget, and there was 4 bidders that bid the electrical there on that project back on February 27th. The morning of the bid, we contacted the only electrical contractor. We asked them what their number was going to be approximately, and they said $10 million. So $10 million, and the final bid was $16.7 million. Then on, prior to the last meeting on April 23rd, we brought up these concerns with the engineer. They said that will be brought up at the meeting. It was never brought up. We think that's a concern. We've since contacted 4 electrical bidders that if the project were to be rebid, they would bid them. In fact, I've got that in writing. Now, we understand you can value engineer the project. That happens a lot. It happens a lot in the private sector. It doesn't happen a lot in the public sector. Not a project of this size, of this scope, a project which I believe is one of the largest projects by the city of Wausau ever. So we're asking you to, I should mention, we wouldn't be here if this electrical thing didn't come up. Again, Myron brought it up. We do a fair share of these types of projects all over the state. I'm not sure if we get 98%, but we get our fair share of projects. During this pandemic, if the project were to be rebid, we're very confident you're going to get better numbers because of the electrical people are interested, because contractors are hungry, and as long as this continues, I think you're going to get better numbers. We're requesting the city rebid the project, do the right thing, do the ethical thing, do the legal thing correctly. You're going to save money. You have the time to do it, and we're requesting a rebid. Thank you.
Is there any discussion or questions?
My understanding has been that we're on a timeline to receive the safe drinking or the state revolving loan funds, and there's a deadline associated with that. I think it was brought up at the last meeting that rebidding the project would possibly disqualify us for meeting this deadline. Is that correct?
I think that if we wanted to rebid the project, we could, but we would be right up against the deadline when those bids would open, and I think we would be at a 4-week timeline. Just to put some perspective into how the bid, initially it was out for 6 weeks, and upon request, with the, electrical contractors and even other bidders, we extended that 2 weeks to accommodate bidders. And I know that Donahue was in contact with the other electrical contractor, but, they could not guarantee, and they were given additional time to put their bid in. So, Mike, if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, I don't want to portray that it was simply denied or taken lightly or not taken seriously. We were talking to both general contractors. We're very worried about the single electrical contractor, subcontractor. So we were talking to that subcontractor. I think I talked to him on Monday, and he asked if we'd grant an extension, and he said he'd know where he was with his bid on Friday. We issued an addendum on Wednesday. That's all the week before bid opening, after the 2-week extension that Eric mentioned. We issued an addendum on Wednesday. There wasn't a bid extension in that. We agreed we were going to talk on Friday and make our final decision at that point. On Wednesday, with that addendum and without an extension in it, there never was an intention to put an extension in it. That electrical bidder said he was out. So he decided, he withdrew, and at that point, we had a decision to make. We're already 8 weeks into this thing. We've got a funding deadline fast approaching. There's no guarantee if we extended it a week, 2 weeks, that small electrical contractor with the staffing that he had would be able to complete a bid. So our decision was to make the electrical cost shown. That's why we all know what that cost is. Let's put that on the bid form, and let's see where we're at. And let's make good decisions armed with the information that we have after the bid opening. And that's really what we've been doing. But it wasn't a situation where we weren't very serious about that, didn't take it seriously, or we just simply said we denied it. It was, frankly, it was that other electrical contractor that decided he was out.
Is there any more discussion? Yeah, feel free.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, Dave Voss, President of Myron Construction. I understand where Mike is coming from C.D. Smith. Obviously, it's very difficult to lose a big job. I just want to talk about facts today, just facts, okay? Mike and C.D. Smith stated that the project would come in under the budgeted, or under the number it is now. I don't know that that's a fact. That's what he'd like to have. I can present facts. We got a letter today from August Winter, who is our major mechanical subcontractor in this job. Ferguson, his supplier, okay? His material suppliers are going up between 3% and 5%, okay, within the next 2 weeks. 3% is $155,000, 5% is $259,000, that the project would go up just on the Ferguson contract. We also got a letter from our metal building contractor, metal building supplier, okay? The base price of steel has went up $50 per ton as of May 1st, okay? Again, fact, nothing what I think, fact, it's going to go up. Fact, with Ferguson, it's going to go up, okay? Unfortunately, we didn't talk to Van Oort Electric that morning of the bid. I didn't know where his bid was going to come from. I know Van Oort is a very good electrical contractor. I know he spent 6 to 7 weeks working on this project to come up with a bid. This is a very, very complicated electrical installation, probably one of the toughest. No one is going to bid this job in 2, 3, or 4 weeks. That's how long it takes, okay? My final comment, and I've reserved this comment for a long time, if anyone on the board or the commission thinks that number is not worthy, the electrical bid is not worthy, you have the right to award the project, and we will go out and secure another electrical contractor if you so desire. We don't have, we will do that. We don't like to do that. We used Van Oort's bid all the way. We're very comfortable with it. We have broke that bid down umpteen ways for Donahue to show them all the intricacies of that bid. I personally think the engineer was a little short on the electrical budget. That happens, okay? So, again, I just wanted to present fact, and any other questions, we're here to help. Thank you.
Do we want to? Okay.
I'm Bob Van Oort, President of Van Oort Electric. Just like to speak a few words on this project. Just a little background, excuse me. We've been in business since my father started this since 1964. 50 years ago in 1970, we bought out a small electrical contractor called Electrical Contracting. Wally Munt was the president. His only terms were we keep his people busy, which we have. We've grown this office. We right now employ 83 people in Marathon County and about 160 people in the north central Wisconsin area. We've grown to a business, excuse me, we've grown to a business of 561 employees. We didn't do that by trying to take advantage of any place that we live and work in. We've been in this Wausau area for 50 years. Our corporate office is here. Last thing I'd want to do is take advantage of the city of Wausau. We've done many projects in this city that you probably recognize: Dudley Tower, Gander Mountain, Lodge at Cedar Creek, Jefferson Street Inn, many water and wastewater smaller projects in this city. A lot of your street projects we've done the underground for. I've never heard anything bad come back. My father taught me a lot of things, and one of it was honesty and integrity besides hard work. Bid quantities. Here's how we take off a job. We just don't throw a dart, at a dartboard and figure out what it takes to give you a $16.7 million project. We count every piece of equipment. We take off every piece of wire, every length of conduit. Just for curiosity, there's 185,000 feet of surface-mounted conduit electrical pipe going into this project. There's 1.2 million feet of wire going into this project. All this goes to components, whether it be lighting, whether it be motors, whether it be instruments, whether it be other devices. This is a complicated project. It runs almost 3 years. We need to keep this existing plant running while the old, while the new one's being built. It's not an easy project. We're going to dedicate a project manager full-time to this project, 2 full-time superintendents. This is not an easy project. We asked many questions of Donahue throughout the bid process. Many of the addendums were a result of our digging into the plans and specs and figure out what may be missing and what we need clarification from. We gave a complete breakdown to Donahue, and I assume you've got it, of all our major costs, whether it be integrator, generator, switchgear, lighting, conduit, other materials, wire. There's a complete breakdown for them to look at, and I assume they shared it. We've done a lot of work for both Myron and C.D. Smith over the years. Right now, we're doing a $10 million project with C.D. Smith. I heard insinuations that they may have not gotten the same price as Myron. Well, that's completely bull. They got the same price at the same time. If you want to see the emails, they're right here. With that, this is a very important project to Van Aert. We want to keep people working this area. It'll give us 3 years worth of work right in town here. Thank you.
Sure, quickly.
I want to mention again, we were told the project was 10 million. It went to 16.7 million. Another fact I forgot to mention is I forgot to hand these out. And in these electrical bidders, they said they need 3 weeks. So I'll hand these out.
Do any of the commissioners have any, I'll give you a second, I guess, to review. Unless you have some comments to share. Yeah? Anyone?
Mayor,
Yes.
it's Commissioner Miller. I don't have access to the handout, obviously.
Sure.
So if there's anything that could be part of the discussion, that would be great.
Could somebody just read the memo to Steve? It's not very long.
Sure. It says, Michael, thanks for the call last week. With the current state of business, we are currently looking at projects such as those. A large project like that would be a great anchor at this time. If it does come back out to bid, please follow up with me to discuss. As always, keep us in mind as the opportunities, and that's from Faith Technologies, Inc. Aaron Bissell. Oh, I guess I just have one. Maybe Does someone have another one? Oh, me too.
Mine is an email from Total to C.D. Smith saying they would bid the project if it came out with an official rebid, giving us 3 weeks.
Okay, this one is from Aaron, same thing, saying they would rebid the project. I don't know. I just give these to you to. Sure. Okay. Is there any, yes, Commissioner Jean?
You know, this is not an easy situation to be in, but I think we would be taking a lot of risk of rebidding. I'd heard before the Myron folks mentioned it, but I'd heard about at least steel prices going up, and I think there's a lot of risks associated with it, so I would prefer to award today.
Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, but somebody may have to correct the numbers. Because I believe we have to bid, or we'd have to award somebody can correct me, to Myron's, the recommended project bid of $77,732,000. Is that correct? And that we would anticipate change orders, and I'm not going to put a number to that, but if I understand it, and including alternate 6, we'd have a net bid of $75,689,553. Is that correct?
Is that right, Mike? Okay.
Right, so it would be awarded at the original bid, and then once the contract is awarded, then there would be a change order for the deduct down to the $75,689,553.
And just a question. Last time we met, we looked at sort of a shadow draft, if you will, from Clark Dietz about an evaluation of operating procedures and asset management. I'm assuming we still plan to look at that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so the motion that we have is to to accept the base bid from Myron from Table 3. That's alternates 6 and 8, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, with the intention that it becomes that bid from, or that number from Table 6.
Is that your motion, Joe?
Sorry, from the
Yes,
memo that we're.
it is. It's Table 3 is where I got the number.
Yep.
And then I don't reflect the numbers from Table 5, but I do reflect the net of 5, or Table 5 and 6, with the total on Table 6 showing that.
I would second
That's
that.
exactly right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Looks like we have some discussion.
No, I just wanted to say that motion was right on the money.
Okay.
It was Table 3 for the award with the expectation of getting to Table 6. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Does any commissioner want to have a little bit more to say or request? Otherwise, are we prepared to vote? All right, all of those in favor of accepting the bid from Table 3, that is $77.7 million, with the expectation that we're moving it down to $75.7 million, can signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion passes. I guess we'll move on to item number 6, discussion on the drinking water treatment project schedule for the safe drinking water, what does L stand for? Loan?
Safe drinking water.
Loan funding.
So the commission awarded the drinking water facility project at the last meeting, but with the new council on and just wanted some clarification, and I had spoken with the mayor a little bit about this. So I had put additional information together for any council members, again, that were interested in the project, because this is on a tighter timeline than the wastewater. And so the expectation is that the notice of award for this and the wastewater this one would be provided this week, and to keep everything on track. But I think there was a lot of information on the drinking water facility that had come out with bid review memos and alternates and the needs for the project, compliance and relocation of that project. So I had tried to outline that in a 1.5-page memorandum and if anyone has any questions on the additional information or any further discussion, because we have all the players here, from the contractor to the engineer, would have any additional discussion or questions. Okay.
Guess we're good there. I guess the only thing left on our agenda is to adjourn, so I guess I would take that motion.
So move.
All those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you.